What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking what is the best draft pick to have for the 2023 fantasy football season. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comments section. Do you agree, disagree? What is your favorite draft pick and why? Along with any other questions you guys might have, we will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get into it. As you can see, we have the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard pulled up here. I figured as we were talking through this, it would be helpful to see some examples, to look at the draft board so we can illustrate the points that we are talking about. Now, as I go through this, obviously, it's going to depend a little bit on the size of your leagues, things like that. So keep that in mind. But I try and do this exercise every single year because I do feel as if the answer can change year to year. And I think this year is a great example of that, especially with the recent trend of wide receivers being drafted early and often in the first round, which we are going to mention in this video, give you our take on it as well. But look, let's not waste any more time. I want to pull up the draft board here right now. This is, for exercise purposes, a 12-team league. We're going to simulate a couple rounds so that we can show you what we mean when we're, giving you our take on this question. But at the end of the day, I like to think about this not specifically one, single draft spot. I like to think about it in terms of a range of draft spots. So the best way to do so is kind of break this down into three different ranges. The beginning, so like the first 3-4 picks, again, depending on the size of your leagues, the last 3-4 picks, and then kind of that what's left over, the middle range, let's call it that. And in my opinion, unequivocally, the best draft spot to have, draft range to have this year is somewhere in the middle. And let me explain why. Because every single spot has its advantages and disadvantages. But, looking at the first 3-4 picks this year, I'm going to go ahead and simulate this right now so that you can see what I'm talking about. We're just going to arbitrarily pick Justin Jefferson, and then we're going to see what happens in the first and second rounds. But the conundrum you're going to have if you're picking first overall is who you go with. And I would say that this year, there are a lot of good options out there, from Justin Jefferson to Christian McCaffrey, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Austin Eckler, maybe a Bijan Robinson. And if you're picking in those first 3-4 spots, then sure, you can land one of those guys, but what's inevitably going to happen, because it's a numbers game at the end of the day, you see this here. I mean, hell, Austin Eckler dropped to the 8th overall pick. Bijan Robinson dropped to the 10th overall pick. There's a wide receiver run, which is happening more and more often nowadays. And regardless of if you agree with that or disagree with that, you are going to have the ability after the first 3 or 4 picks to still land one of those elite guys that you can make a case for to be drafted first overall. That's why I think this year in particular, because it's such a deep player pool at the top specifically, that drafting somewhere in the middle is so advantageous. Now, I know what a lot of you are going to say. Well, if I draft first overall, I can have my choice at so many of these players. But okay, afterwards, you have to wait 20 picks or even more to make another selection. And that depth, those positional values are going to dwindle. And that's the problem with having the first overall pick, especially when there are multiple correct choices of who to select first overall, like there are this year. And then on the flip side, if you're picking towards the end of the draft, sure, the good thing is you have those back-to-back picks, and that can be great if somebody has dropped to you. Like, in this case, there's somebody that can land a Bijan Robinson and a Nick Chubb. That's absolutely insane. But the problem is, what happens afterwards? What happens in the 3rd and 4th, 5th, 6th rounds? Because then you're going to face the exact same issues that somebody that's drafting, first overall or in that first range of picks. The value is going to dwindle, and it's going to become a lot harder. Now, yes, a lot of us can go ahead if we're very experienced in the drafting process and circumnavigate those situations. But, we're talking about this for somebody that isn't doing, 100 plus mock drafts or something like that. Basically a normal person, right? And that's why I think picking somewhere in the middle is such a big boost this season, because not only are you getting, I don't even want to call it the leftovers of what could be the first overall pick, but you're getting legitimate guys, that can finish top 5 or top 3 in those ranges. Austin Eckler, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, something like that. And you're taking advantage of the value. But then afterwards, what's key to me is you don't have to wait as long to make another selection. And there's a pretty high likelihood that the value that you're going to see is much better than the people that are picking at either one of those extremes. If there's somebody that's dropping, you're much more likely to go ahead and land them than someone picking first or last overall that's going to have to wait so much longer between their next set of picks. And on top of that, you're not going to have to reach as often as those individuals are either, because look, if you want to land Travis Kelce, but you're drafting first overall, guess what? You got to draft Travis Kelce first overall, because he ain't going to make it back to you, even if he drops a little bit past his ADP at the end of the second round. So, that's a completely different story if you're picking somewhere in the middle, with a player kind of in that range. Crazy things happen. ADPs fluctuate, but they don't fluctuate to that large of an extent. And that's why I really like this middle range of picks. And look, I also promised to you guys that I would talk about the whole running back or wide receiver situation. That's why, depending on whether, your team running back or team wide receiver early in the first round, honestly, doesn't matter. I'm not here to debate that in this video. We've already talked about that before. But what's so great about picking, 5th overall, 6th overall, you are still going to have the ability to make that decision for yourself, whether you want to go running back or wide receiver. Because, this is just one example, but we are seeing this a lot in all the mock drafts that we have done on a bunch of different platforms. More than likely, you're going to have one of the top 3 running backs fall to you in this 5th, 6th overall range. Also, it's probably one of the top 3 wide receivers. Now, sure, it's going to depend on what platform you're drafting, the format and the people that you're drafting with. But more than likely, again, it's a numbers game, and picking somewhere in the middle really takes advantage of that aspect of it. And, in the same breath, in the second round, in the third round, there's not as big of a drop off, like we said, in the player pool of talent. And it really allows you, I would say, the best opportunity to build a balanced roster where there's not a huge drop off from player to player to player, which doesn't always happen if you're picking at the either two of the extremes, first or kind of last overall, but it is a lot more likely to happen there. So again, point blank, unequivocally for me, laying this issue to rest for 2023, the best overall draft pick to have is somewhere in the middle, that middle range of picks like 4 to 7, 5 to 8, something like that. Let me know if you guys agree with that sentiment, yes or no, why or why not. And if you guys have any other questions, let us hear it in the comments. We will do our best to answer them all. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.